Hey, Matt, thanks for joining today.
Sure.
This is session 2. So we're going to build a task list from scratch using Claude Code. And just as a reminder, this is to help people that have never really dug into Claude Code before, just watch somebody go through how it's done. I've only been doing it for 3 weeks. I have built plenty of low code, no code apps and websites before, so I'm somewhat familiar with this concept. But I think it's really important for people to see you can just get in here and start digging around. And as long as it's on your local desktop, your local laptop, worst case scenario is you just need to wipe it and start again, right? So you can make lots of mistakes very safely. And that's really what we're trying to show people. The other part is session 1 was kind of winging it. We were vibe coding, if you will. Today is vibe coding plus a little bit of planning. So I've done a few things in advance that we've learned from our session 1, but I also wanted to cover this here. So really 5 key lessons. One is prompting is the new coding. So what this effectively says is you're going to be able to develop software applications using natural language. That's the bottom line. And when you're doing this, you want to be specific. You want to really give context as to what you're trying to build and trying to achieve. And you can speak in terms of outcomes when you're planning with Cloud Chat. And you want to keep in mind that you can always iterate. This isn't something that you need to get perfect the first time. Iteration is part of software development today. And we're all human beings. We're not going to get things right perfectly the first time or the second time or the 100th time for that matter. Well, actually what we do is after we screw up 100 times, we then call it continuous improvement. Right? So as we start to get into this today, we're going to plan. We want to plan first. I'll show you what that looked like. Then we're going to start to build. And while we're building and it's processing, we're going to have some opportunity to chat. So this can be open conversation as we're going through there. And Matt, I appreciate you joining me because I know that you have a lot of experience with this. So as we're going through and you have some points you'd like to make or some advice from lessons learned, please feel free to add to that. And then the third one is we're going to test and validate. Database is important. And I know for those who have never programmed, this is maybe a topic that's a little intimidating. We're starting out with a database called SQLite. I am using Windows and I'm using the IDE Visual Studio Code to do this. You'll see what this is. You'll figure out what all these terms mean through repetition. But picking a database is important, whether it's a one-off just for you or if it's for an enterprise. Each of those have varying scale and capability and security and things we're not really going to get into today, but the one out of the box is almost like it's interfacing with an Excel spreadsheet. And the challenge with that one is you can't do any sophisticated searching and you want to be able to create, delete records efficiently. And the next step up is SQLite. How do I know this? Because I asked Claude and it told me so. Now, I happen to know a lot about databases. And what I was pleasantly surprised by is I thought this was a pretty good recommendation. I've never used it before. And as I started to get into it, I've built 3 or 4 apps now. And one of them is fairly sophisticated. And SQLite's holding up pretty good. Now, I don't have 100 people a day banging into it. Hey, Bruce, how you doing, bud? So I don't have 100 people a day coming into it, but for illustrative purposes, I think this is fine. So we're going to start getting into some terms that are database schema that may seem a little fancy, but all database schema means it's just the design. Again, I didn't design it. Claude Code did as we go through the planning. And
hey, Michael, excuse me, I'm going to step away, but I'm still listening. I'll be back.
No problem, Bruce. Thanks for joining. And then the point 4 is you don't need to understand every line. So focus on logic, not syntax. So what that means is syntax is a word that we use to describe the code that it's creating right in front of you and the form that it's using while it's creating code. If you're a programmer, syntax is everything. If you're a low code, no code, natural language programmer, frankly, you could have blindfolds on. It wouldn't make a difference. So you want to focus on the logic, which comes through testing through the outcome after you hit a point where you can view it on a web browser and start testing it. AI handles all the heavy lifting. And then you want to think in terms of systems. Ask, does this do what I expect? If yes, move forward. If it doesn't, understand why. Okay, so understanding the whys and hows are important. But what I think I recommend, and Matt, you probably have the same opinion, is just start off with something small. And that's why we picked a task list, because a task list is fairly easy to achieve in this context. As they start to get more sophisticated, your planning is going to get more sophisticated. Now, there's a little bit of a conundrum with starting with a small application that's not meaningful. And sometimes what happens is it's not a good enough motivator to push your way through, especially when you start running into problems. So I happen to pick an application that I referred to as the context brain, and I needed article ideas generated for me. And I was incentivized enough to complete the app to see the output because I just wanted it to make my life easier. If you have something like that, great. It's even better because it'll force you through the hard lessons. And there's going to be some. I can tell you right now, when I set up my desktop environment for this, it took me 8 hours. 6 of them, I was pounding my head on the wall. And I think if I knew what I was doing the first time, probably taking me an hour. But nonetheless, we all go through it. It's a part of the process, and that's part of what we want to convey. Therefore, mistakes are part of the process. Things will break as Claude Code or Codex or Anti-Gravity or Lovable or any other system that's building in natural language adds features. It will, on occasion, break something it already built. And guess what? So do human being programmers. This is nothing unusual. That's why testing is so important. But what is actually fascinating to me about this is that this technology allows you to iterate, bug test all simultaneously. It's amazing when you start to think about it, because 10 years ago, a coder would be coding, they would roll it out to a test server, a tester would get it, they would run into a bug in the first 30 seconds, they'd kick it back, and then they would have to wait a week, 2, 3. And if you're in a large corporation, you might wait 6. So what's happening here is all of that stuff is in a real tight circle, and you're just going around, and literally you're designing and you're iterating and you're bug fixing all simultaneously. I appreciate that just because I've written several apps. And so I find that part fascinating. So that's the 5 key things to keep in mind as we're going through this. I'm going to show you a couple environments right now. So the first one, which my guess is most of you will be familiar with, is Claude Code or Claude Chat. Now, I have downloaded the desktop app. It does have Cowork and Code on it, but I don't use Claude Code in the desktop. I just use the chat feature to help me plan and for it to create the prompts that I'm going to then copy and paste into my terminal. Now, let's talk about the word terminal, because we have one word that means we have one word that means the same thing in multiple instances, right? So if you're a Windows person, you remember back in the day, these were command prompts, and we used to do things like make directories. These were very common pre-Windows, right? So this was known as DOS at the time, for those that have been around the sun enough cycles, right? So sometimes it'll be referring to you need to reboot your server or relaunch the server in terminal or the command terminal, or you'll see command prompt, and it means this. And sometimes it's telling you to put a prompt in the terminal, but it's within the terminal within Visual Studio Code, which is this interface, or known as an IDE. So that is a design and that's an interface design that we use that makes it easier. Now, Matt uses the command prompt terminal. He uses the raw terminal. I like VSC. Makes it a little bit easier. I can see my directory structure here. I can see chat if I want to do this. And what's nice about this is when you're starting out, if this is creating code and you can see it churning here, you can ask it questions on the right side. And it can work like this is like Claude chat. This is Claude Code. Now, it also has Claude Code over here. Please don't let that confuse you. All you need to do is really focus on the center console and the directories. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this session off and tell you what I did to get this started. All of my apps live neatly on my desktop. I do back it up. Okay, I have a backup routine that goes to a off-site hard drive, or you can back it up to the cloud, whatever you like.
Hey, Michael, I'm
Yes,
sorry, before you get into that, because I've been using VS Code, and I would go back and forth with desktop chat or website chat, but when I open up the chat window in VS Studio and it has sessions, does it keep track of, so I open up a folder to work in.
Yep.
The sessions that it keeps track of, are those the previous sessions where I've been interacting with VS Code?
It's a good question. I'll tell you what my understanding is. My understanding is once you shut that window down, any session memory is wiped out and it's gone. So I basically have a prompt that I had Claude Chat create for me, and I go in there and I say, hey, I need to back up or need to update my Claude.md file with anything that I've done in this session.
I do that, yeah.
Okay, yep. And that's what retains the memory or the context. And then I do a backup. I do a /backup command. And those are the two things I do religiously before I shut down. My understanding is once you shut it down, any context, even if you see it there, is gone.
What is /backup?
So /backup is a command that you can have when you're in a terminal window. So here, let me, I'm going to get this started. I'll show you an example.
You can, by the way, I'm digressing and you're going to address it later.
No, you're fine. So when we get to that part at the end, what I was going to do today or what I was going to do in session 3 is there's some key commands that you need to know. And for session 3, I was going to do the command. But basically, you can just do /backup and it'll literally back up the database and puts it in a zip file and it'll put it in a designated directory.
Thank you.
For clarification, Michael, pardon me. I would like to understand that better. I was trying to follow along. That's in VS Code that does that?
Yes. So I set up a command. It's not native when you start.
Yep.
You have to tell it to create it and it'll create the backup command.
Copy that. Thank you.
Yep. It almost feels like a macro, right? So what I did just when we start, now these sessions aren't for setting up your laptop. I think I'm going to have another session. I'm going to set aside a couple hours and do it live, but I'm going to wipe my laptop and I'm literally going to build it from scratch. So for those Mac users, Matt, you might want to bring some popcorn. But I set it up so all my apps are resident on my desktop, makes it super easy. And I did name it task-list-session 2. That's all I need to do. And then in my VSC, all I have to do is open folder. I find that folder here, double click, and now all you see is that single folder right here. Now, as of right now, there's nothing in it. There's no app. We're literally starting cold from scratch. The other thing that you'll do is when you start your terminal in Visual Studio Code is you do Control tilde, and that's what brings up the window, and then you just type in Claude, and you're ready to go. Once you see this reminds me of asteroids, or not asteroids, Space Invaders. Is it supposed to be a lobster?
I don't know. For a throwback, I said the same thing. Space Invaders or Galaxia. Remember that dropped down?
Yeah, perfect.
Similar.
So this is it. And now what's going to happen is I will start to engage with chat to do my planning. So what does that really mean? So I've already done this, but I'm just going to take us through. I apologize because I know I'm scrolling. It's hard. So I literally get in here and I just talk to it. I talk to Matt, right? I've been conducting a 3-session course in how to build apps. I'm in session 2. I successfully built a very simple task list that had add new tasks, edit tasks, just bring it up to date. Now what I'd like to do is add some new features. What do you suggest? Now, what's been interesting today, and Matt and Bruce, I don't know if you've run into this, but I have been getting maxed out on my context memory in chat all day. I don't even have a lot in there, or I haven't been in a chat for a long time, and it's given me warnings. So I've had to tell it, respond to me in summary, because I don't want to blow out my context memory here. And I've looked at my usage and I'm fine there. So I'm not sure what's going on. So now it acknowledges me. You got a solid foundation. You can add, edit, delete, strike through, whatnot. So then I say, also, we need to make sure that we are going to, go ahead.
I can share some thoughts with you on that because I ran
Please.
I'm working on, I was doing a lot. I was using this deep plan, deep project thing, and it hit the limits within the 5-hour session. And I looked into it a little bit in terms of what I could do because admittedly I was loading a lot. And I would go into Claude and I would do something and then I would run it in code. But if I didn't understand it, it would be, okay, let's copy paste it into Claude. Tell me what the hell it's saying. Give me the prompt. And so I just actually learned this from one of Nate's lessons in his, I'm going through his course that you've already done about the tokens. And it turns out every time that I paste something in and then it gives me an output, I'm using multiple tokens. And it's only because they don't talk to each other. So when I pull it out of one, put it in the other, that's tokens in, a lot more tokens out. And so what I did was I said, when I start the next session, give me a prompt that says, okay, because you know how Claude Code will run and it'll ask you a question. And sometimes I have to go to chat and say, what the hell is it talking about?
Right.
So what I do now is I say, give me a prompt. And the prompt is, and in fact, I was thinking about maybe posting these. I've got a bunch of them, but it essentially says, do not stop to ask me questions as you're going through this, unless it's something that'll break something or other. Save them to the end, put them into a file with a time state, and put that into something like questions timestamp and put it in a questions folder that it created.
Really?
And then what I will do is I take that file and I give the text file to Claude Chat and say, those are questions. Give me the answers to all of them, and then create a markdown file called answers with a timestamp that I can download. And that will again get put into the, then Claude Code can just, I say, the answers are there, use them and proceed. Because half the time, right, when there's a question and Claude, and I don't understand it, and whatever Claude Chat says, I go, fine. I just copy and paste it.
Right.
And as I converse with it, that will save token usage, because I think what Nate said is whatever tokens you use putting it in, it's 4 times that with the output. And so
Correct.
that may be a way. So that's part of the process.
Interesting. That's great. So I've adopted a hybrid of that because I've actually started to tell it also respond to me in terse short term right now. And so now the one lesson that we did learn out of session 1 is we need to tell it what the name of the app is. We need to tell it where it's at. We need to tell it we want to be on local host. For those that aren't familiar with this concept, you basically have a lightweight web server that's inherent on a desktop or a laptop, and you can view applications through local host, and it'll give you numbers, which we'll cover in a second. And then I did need to tell it, make sure that you're creating prompts for me to cut and paste into the VSC terminal. So these are things, and what I encourage people to do, especially if you've never done this before, you have to, it's okay if you don't understand these things. What you need to do is immerse yourself in the community. Well, AI Bits and Pieces, like AI for Life, like AIS Plus, where you're constantly hearing these terms. So the first month I was in Nate's group, and I'm a huge Nate Herc fan. For the first month, it was just getting used to all the terminology. Now, I've actually been in that community now since May of last year. And what's happening now is it is keeping the sword sharp. it keeps me up to date on everything that's on trend. So if you can plug into 1 or 2 communities or 3 communities that you really like, I can't digest more than that personally because I like the relationship side. So again, I know people that have 6 or 8 communities. It's too much for me. So I concentrate a little bit. So to get back on track here, I'm basically telling it specific information. I said, hey, let's use localhost 3016. It's noted. Let's see what that does. I said, hey, let's use SQLite database. Great. It uses a term here called persistence. So again, do I need to know what that means? Not necessarily. Then I just ask it for a summer. Okay. And at that point, it kind of regurgitates everything for me again. And then I started to ask it based on session 1, we'd had edit delete. What are other features we can add? And I commonly do this. And now I've been an executive for 25 plus years. I was a manager, supervisor, and then I was a team player for a long time. This is how I would engage a team. If I was a project manager or a manager, an executive, and I had people in the room, one of the things that you're taught as a manager and as an executive is don't be the smartest guy in the room. Your collective team should be smarter than you as an individual. And that is so ingrained in me. I defer to Claude as a teammate and somebody on a team that has knowledge it can share with me. And then I do what I've always done as an executive. I take my collective world experience and then I'll interject or direct the team to go in one way or the other. Also, I happen to be privy of budgets, strategic planning, and a bunch of other stuff that people in the room may not know. And it's the same thing with Claude. It doesn't know yet. So it says, let's add due dates, priority levels, categories, and then it gave me a bunch of other ideas, filtering and sorting, note detail, UX, and polish. Let's drag and drop. And I said, for this session, that's getting a little too much. Let's carve some of this out. And that's what the conversation was. I don't need the UX and polish. Let's carry that out of there. So it reiterates to me, here's what's going to happen. It'll get you within your time constraint. And then it'll specifically say, somewhere in here, it confirmed back to me what the exclusions are. So now I did say as a note and a reminder, because you'll start to build an intuition for this. I started to get the feeling it was thinking it was going to build on top of the session 1 task list. So I reiterated as a note, we're not leveraging the first app. We're starting from scratch. Understood. Here's what we're going to build. Here's what the filter is. Sorry. Right.
That happens so much, right?
Yep. And then one of the things that I do pretty often is, can you give me the plan in terms of how we're going to build this in simple terms? I don't need this big elaborate plan. I don't need all the schemas and all the other fancy stuff. It's not, I'm just trying to, first of all, I don't want to read and digest all that. That's what Claude's for, right? So it gives me phase 1, phase 2 through 6. Great. It looks good to me. I just want to get it feel. Plus, I always know I can change it, right? I'm a very visual learner. So I really would like to, some of the stuff I just like to see. Now, please note, I do not want to use, so this has been kind of an interesting issue for me. The first 4 apps I built with this method, which is copying back and forth between the desktop and a VSC, which I probably am, at some point, I'm probably going to advance beyond that. But right now, that's kind of like my training wheels. In the first 4 apps, I didn't have to tell it, build prompts for me to copy and paste. All of a sudden, now that I'm building this one, it's giving me almost programmer guidelines as if I should know what to type in. So based on that, I've had to say, please note, I do not want to use the chat filter or the chat feature because it started to tell me, put it in chat in the VSC IDE. The other thing that it did to me last week was it was almost as if it hallucinated and thought it was Claude Code. And it said, we built the scaffolding, we're ready to go. And I'm like, no, you're in chat, you're not in code. So these are weird things. But what
I have to remind it almost all the time, you are for brainstorming, Claude Code is for executing. Because if you don't tell it that, it'll just go off and do it for you, which is nice. But I think it's an inefficient use of the tokens. I'm not sure.
Well, that's true. And I agree with that 100%. And I'm also glad that you have that experience, because part of the reason we're having these sessions is to share with people weird stuff is still happening, because this is bleeding edge. And I know this tool feels sometimes like it's conscious. It's thinking it is completely unaware. It's all probabilistic associations with numbers and vectors behind the scenes, which you don't need to understand right now. But if you want to, I got definitions for you to understand that. If you understand vectors,
we're going to have a conversation to compare. I don't know if you maybe also, but when I saw what you've done, Michael, I think I'm probably about where you are, but a little behind. I don't have the knowledge, and this is very useful for me, even though I built a lot. What I'm doing now is more complex, but I've been picking up a lot of good tips just in the short time here. So I'm glad you're doing this.
And I'm somebody who just digs in and goes. So
Yeah, me too.
I'm visual. I like to see it. So the medium's good for me. So what I did was I said, please note, I do not want to use the chat feature inside the VSC. I want to use the terminal portion of it. So then I said, can you please provide me with a sample? So then it provides me with a sample. Great. That looks familiar. I know what that looks like. No problem. So we go through all this, and then I tell it I've set up the folder on the desktop. Now I am assuming I could probably have the same conversation over here in this right window. And it will, not only that, I think once it tells me what the plan is and it'll run through the plan, then it asks me, do you want to execute? I say yes, and then it builds the code. I just don't like the way this feels for whatever reason. And the other advantage that I like about using the desktop or the web, it doesn't matter, is that I have several projects in the same project folder. And sometimes I like to refer to the other project, and I like it to have it in memory. So I'll tell you, here's the other reason I really like it. I know that I think on the Mac, you can remotely access your instance through your phone. I know that, but the other day we were at a party and we were saying goodbye. My wife was talking to somebody before we left, and she got into about a 10-minute conversation. I wasn't engaged in the conversation, so I was just sitting there on the couch waiting to go. And I pulled out my phone, and because I had all my project planning and everything on something I was going to work on, throughout the evening, I just had this idea pop into my head. And literally in 10 minutes, I created an entirely new module. I built an entire plan while I was sitting there. And I couldn't have done that if I wanted to do that everything in the terminal. So
done it at the grocery store and chat on my phone.
Well, and I'll tell you the other thing I do, because I write a ton of articles for different communities and for social posts. And when I'm done with all this context, I will literally stop and say, hey, I want to write a post on this. Can you please write a post to share what we did today? And then I can just post it. And I have everything in context. So it works really well for me for other unrelated reasons. So here we are, we're 40 minutes in. And really what we're doing right now is effectively planning. We are talking about the prompts, what we went through. And now I said earlier on, I did ask it, hey, can you make me aware of the 6 phases we're going to go through in summary version, and give me the first prompt. So here's my first prompt that I need to put in. Then I literally told it, hey, the session's about to start. Let's whip together real quick a Gamma presentation. So Bruce, when you came in, that's what we were going through. Actually, I probably should show that. That'd probably be a good one to do as well. And then here's all my session 2 planning. So I got my context. I have my technical setup, my features we decided on for today. So these are all the feature set, the build phases that we're going to leverage, and now we're ready to go. So I'm just going to ask it. I'm using Whisper Flow as well. Can you give me the first prompt so I can start to build the task list? Which I know it gave it to me above. Sometimes I like to test it and see if it's going to give me something predictable. So there it is, and copy and paste and hit go. All right, now the other thing I need to do while this is churning is I do need to pay attention to my token usage. I do have extra usage set up, so it won't stop us today if we happen to go over it. This just as a reminder, you have current session limitations, you have weekly session limitations. The current sessions refreshes every rolling 5 hours. Is it the case where once you hit your weekly limit, you're done for the week? You can't buy extra usage? Is that true?
You can buy extra usage, absolutely. But if you're gonna, again, from $20 to $100 for the max account is the difference, right? So
Yeah.
if you're gonna jump to the max account, you're gonna see another setting inside there for Sonnet, and that refreshes a couple days early, and you almost cannot run out of that, literally, as much
Okay.
as you can use Sonnet. It's
All right.
Opus that kills you, but
That's what I found. And
Yeah.
so I try to remember to check because I don't think it does it now, but I think by default VS Code might go to Opus. And I ran into that too. And I'll even ask it because you can run into the same problem if you use deep research on complexity. I'll even ask it, here it is, do we need Opus? And for this kind of task, it most of the time Sonnet seems to be just fine. And it really made a difference because I was hitting those limits on a Thursday. So
the rule for me is anything that goes into terminal is through Opus. Anything. And anything in chat or cowork is Sonnet.
yeah. And
Yep.
why is that?
Because if I'm in terminal, I'm building. And so there's nothing better than Opus for building. Sonnet's great for chat, interaction, planning, research, fantastic. But
So
it
I,
doesn't,
I,
it's
I,
not
I
going to go,
use Opus in terminal. I can run out of my session limits much
you're not
faster.
going to, I highly doubt you're going to. I would be very surprised if you did. Now, I
So
could be
Opus
wrong
is
because I just
better.
don't know.
Matt, is Opus a higher thinking model,
Yeah.
or is
Yeah.
it just optimized for that task better?
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of both. And it's intentionally built for solving problems. It does complex reasoning so much better than Sonnet, hence
So
why it costs more.
so it sounds like, as a general rule of thumb, you don't generally need Opus in chat, but it's not as wasteful in terminal as it might be in chat. I'm
It's
not
not
saying.
wasteful in terminal at all. But in chat, you don't need it unless you need some extended thinking, some really complex issue to solve. But again, that's why you plan and iterate, and handing that off to you'll have it's already gonna now the other point to that is
Hey, Matt, before you go to the next point, I just
yeah,
want to let everybody know. So there's two things going on right now. We're having a side conversation while Claude Code is building away. Now, if you were watching the screen, I did have to approve a couple of changes. It asked me hit one or two. I always hit one or two. I never question it. You can set to auto approve. We'll cover that later in session 3. But now what's happening is you'll see it says it's cooked for a minute and a half. And now all I do is I copy and paste this back into my prompt window because I want it to see, hey, here's the latest status. And it keeps total context of this. So now it says, great, phase 1's done. Now here's phase 2. So all I'm going to do is copy and paste this back into the terminal. And while that's cooking, go ahead, Matt. Sorry,
so
didn't mean.
no, it's perfect segue there. So this is exactly the point is if you're using, let's say, haiku in terminal, you're probably going to take 20 passes, and these are just numbers I'm making up or illustration, but let's say it's going to take 20 passes to do it correctly and figure it out. Sonnet is probably going to take 10 passes to do it correctly and figure out. Opus is going to take 1 or 2 passes to figure it out. That's how I imagine it. So when it comes to critical thinking and really complex issues, just think about it that way.
So good. So what I take away from it is, right, I got that part, right? So if I run every day, I'm going to use energy better. But well, let me not get that. So the way to use because I'm just at the point now where I have to start thinking about tokens, is that what you do in chat as a general rule of thumb, it's not so complicated that maybe it can probably get by in just one pass or two, and it's good enough for what you want. But when you go to terminal, you want it but because you have done all of the planning and setup in chat, using Sonnet, now you're really making the most efficient use because you're avoiding giving Terminal and Opus things to do that will waste. Basically, you're just wasting the tokens or Opus's power because you're asking a bodybuilder to lift a 10-pound weight. Well, that's stupid, right? That's what it sounds like you're saying is
Precisely. Great example.
That's really good because sometimes I will go in code and say, explain what you just did.
And that's okay to do that too. It's fine.
Hey, Matt, I saw it just cooked again. It just finished at all 5 routes working perfectly. It's giving me an update here. You will start to understand get, post, put, delete if you're a non-programmer after time through repetition. Now, again, I'm just going to literally take the feedback that we got from the terminal and I'm going to punch it into chat. Great. And you can see it's just stepping me through as I ask it to do. And to make an assumption, I understand everything it's talking about. It's not true. I understand conceptually what's going on. I couldn't write this program if I wanted to. And here's the other thing. What this has put out in the last 6 minutes probably would have taken a programmer, I don't know, from scratch. Matt, what do you think? A week, 40 hours?
A week or two. You know, if you have to handwrite all that code with no tools, maybe a month. It's incredibly efficient.
Well, you made a good point at the beginning, Michael, where you said you have to look at the AI as like a personal assistant. How would you manage somebody? You would hire somebody who could do the job. You would tell them what you wanted, the outcome you wanted, and you wanted to be sure that they understood what you wanted, what it looked like. And then you say, just go do that. I really don't. They'll come back and want to tell you sometimes, well, I don't care. Does it do what I asked you to do? And if not, then we need to make the changes. That's pretty much how I'm treating it. What you've done here that I have not been aware of is this local host, because it's been creating everything for me as HTML files, which I subsequently will deploy as tools using GitHub and Cloudflare because of things I'm making for clients and stuff. But
I'm only familiar
local
with
host is a new thing for me.
Well, and it's inherent. Are you on a Mac or a PC, Bruce?
I'm on a PC, but I'm going to check it out because it seems like that would be a better way to just get a first glimpse than an.
I'll show you some tricks that you got to keep in mind today. Once it gets built, it's going to have us reboot the server. So you need to close out the server, and then there's a specific command. Are you used to working in the command windows?
Is that a virtual server? I have
it's a web server. I don't think it's not a virtual server. It's like So are you familiar with IIS? Were you
No, but I don't want to distract. Well, that's a totally different topic, but I just wanted to say I made a note to learn about that because that may be a better alternative than what I'm doing in some cases.
Well, I'm going to show you the benefit of it, and it's so much better when you're iterating and you're making changes. Now, well, I don't like working from the HTML files at all. I would prefer localhost. Now, what's going to happen when I get into more sophisticated databases and stuff? Well, I'm either going to have to convert the database when I go to launch it, because SQLite's not going to fly once it's been hosted. If I'm using it for my own personal use, that's fine.
Well,
but how I'm aware of it is back in the day, we were writing full-blown enterprise apps with classic ASP and Microsoft. And we would have an IIS server that was on the PC, and that's how we would test it. So the local host to me is just kind of a concept that's carried forward from development days.
The way mine are is I've got the HTML and I've got one tool that is available for people to use. And the IP was in .js files, which are now, I didn't realize that they were exposed, but they're now sitting on Cloudflare protected. And just deploying it that way. But the question I have is, what if one day I don't want to deploy it as a web browser, although I think a lot of people would appreciate that. What if I wanted it to be like an app? I'm not there yet, but.
So this just finished cooking again. You can see it's taking about a minute and a half per phase. Now, normally what I will do is I will ask it how many total phases there are. before I start. I don't really know. If it goes beyond 10 or 12, I'd be, so there you go. All 5 phases are complete. And here's the summary. So what I simply did is I took the prompts that it has provided, and then once I'm in my terminal, where you can see where you'll see these bash commands, at that point, it's still coding. And then generally there's this dot and it'll say everything's in place. Here's exactly what changed. And it ends with cooked for. And I just copy and paste that back in. And then I just allow it to digest for me. Now, every now and then it'll come back and, well, in the design process, there would be something we didn't think of in the plan, and it's going to ask a fork in a road question. You can always punt, say, come back later. Let's focus on this. What do you suggest? And I always try and make sure that whatever I'm working on, I don't leave too many open paths. I want to have one complete thought at a time if it's possible. So this now says we could complete build summary. We did phase 1. It built node.js. So I'm going to let Matt talk about node.js, since you just wrote an article on that yesterday or today, because I think last time we met, we had a question on what this does. So Matt, can you educate us on that? I think you're on mute, Matt.
I think I have 2 or 3 microphones that I have to go through here. My apologies. Let me separate this out. I apologize. You caught me working.
So there's a difference between doing it in an HTML and at least having local hosts. But if I wanted to make it for other people to use, it can't be on local hosts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Bruce, I was just addressing that in chat, actually. You can
Okay.
create an HTML file and you can, well, I didn't send it yet. I was half writing that and answering somebody else. And I'm going to, the cool part is you can make it interactive. So HTML files, that's where I put all my lesson plans on it. So when you send that, it'll actually open up a browser, whatever their default browser is, and then they're able to interact with it. And they're super small files. They're like 4K, 16K, pretty tiny. But about Node.js, this is something that was interesting to me because we see it every day, right? We see it and we don't have to understand, to Michael's point. There's a lot of terminology that you're going to see, but not have to understand, because we're all have evolved to the chat question, copy terminal, put it back in chat. We're using the tools how they're supposed to be used. It's a natural evolution, I'll say, for us to do that, because we don't have coding experience. We don't have what it takes to understand that. But again, to Michael's point again, you don't need to necessarily understand it, the language, but the concept. So I wanted to start dropping some glossary terms, and Node.js was the first one. And basically, it was a little history for you. 2009, JavaScript, for those 3 of us sitting here especially, lived almost entirely inside web browsers. And so a gentleman named Ryan Dahl pulled Chrome's V8 engine out, wrapped it up so we could run JavaScript in terminal. So now JavaScript became a back-end language pretty much overnight. So JavaScript was awesome inside of browsers for what it could do. And we see that now. So basically Node.js is just runtime. Just means it's running. It's what it's running on.
Very good. Yes, and it's self-contained, and there is different versions of it. So you just need to understand how to get to the version and verify that. Again, ask chat how you find it out. Anything you have a question on, go ahead and ask chat.
Open up terminal and type node hyphen version, and it'll tell you.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, you
Right,
could do.
I know that one.
Yeah, you could do that. It's not something you're going to have to check frequently. It's just you either have it or it'll tell you have it or you don't. It'll say found, or it'll say here's your version.
So this one, I know I needed version 17. I needed version 17. I'm on version 24. As long as you keep your terminal updated, I believe it'll pull it down in VSC automatically.
I have a script that runs every day and checks to make sure that all of my services are up and running and up to date, and a news check to see if there's anything that was released. just to not launch something that what happened the other day when something got leaked. It wasn't the same day that Anthropic leaked their code.
500,000 lines of code.
There was something else that happened that same day that was completely unrelated that everyone started to tie together, which were
I know that.
you know, I was up at that time, but I didn't run anything. So, anyways, I'm sorry. I don't mean to get distracted.
No, you're good. So session 2 now. So believe it or not, while we've been sitting here talking, Claude Code built the app. So what did it build? So first, basically infrastructure, including running my local host on port 316 or 3016. Now, the keep in mind, for every app you have, it's going to have its own port. And without getting too much into detail, it will put the database on one port, the front end on another port. So it'll direct you into what it's doing. If you have a conflict, it'll be apparent you have a conflict because either the wrong site will come up or it says it's not working. Just tell Claude and it'll step you through it. It added the core features, add, edit, delete, mark completed, color-coded priorities. It has a progress bar. So this is all new for me. I haven't seen this piece yet. Filtering and sorting by keyword and whatnot, and a completed section, active and completed tasks, collapsible completed section, arrow toggles. I don't know, sounds pretty cool. So it's done. So now what you're going to do is I just take a shot that it's going to load. So if I just hit refresh on localhost 316, this is literally the app. Now you immediately need to start testing. It is not unusual for Claude Code to put what looks like a functioning site. It'll put false fields out there. They're not connected to anything, especially if you've done something very sophisticated. So one of the things that's going to be key, and you're going to learn the hard way, you're going to give it too many instructions too many times. It'll probably look, I've never had it not look like I expect, but then nothing works. It's just the veneer of it, right? So let's just take a look at this. Test 1. Oh, we have notes. Can we test the note field, please? Here's my priority high. Now, I would prefer I can have drop down. So one of the instant things I would note is that I would want to have the ability to create my own categories, but have a drop down, because if not, people start doing them manually. They're not going to be consistent. We'll put for demo. This is kind of cool. It has a due date field, and we'll just say it's in progress. Now let's add it. So now the question is, did it add it? Yep, perfect. Test 1 in progress. I'll tell you what, Claude does a pretty good job of these type of layouts. So this is going to be key. So if we were doing HTML files, and Bruce, you correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. If I hit the refresh button right now, this data would go away because it's not storing it in a database. So Bruce, when you have the HTML file, is it tied to a database?
Well,
it's not going to be connected.
I like
the
to
HTML file is not going to be. It's just going to be on the local. The HTML file is going to be in the browser, and that's it. Your local host right now, Michael, has the ability to interact. We can build. It can touch files. You can build memory for it. You can build storage for it. But again, the advantage of the HTML file is so you can send that. You don't want to send your local host out. That's public. So you don't want people to come to. You don't want to publish that. But the HTML file gives you the ability to create this exact look and feel and to show them. But for interaction for their database, that's a different hookup. That's the Vercel, or that's the Cloudflare, wherever you want to host it, if you want them to use it on the web.
So what I did, because I built several now. So what I found is, as Matthew's saying, is if you build it HTML, all right, excuse me, one of the things you can do, if you go to code and you make a change, you can just refresh the page. But any data that you put into it is going to stay there as long as you use the same browser and you haven't cleared the browser cache in between. So if I did it in Chrome and then I go to open it up in Explorer, the data won't be there. If I do it in Chrome and I erase the data, then I clear the cache, then it won't be there. And so what that led me to, because I didn't know about GitHub, is like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to stop depending on my computer. So now what I do, because the accounts are free and I'm not using them, is everything goes to GitHub and then everything is on. But in order to be able to access it from any computer, anywhere, and have my data, and now everything sits on Cloudflare. And for some things, it's just there in a database. And in some case, like my tool, the .js files are behind a wall. They're secure so that people can't see them if they click on the HTML, because if the IP was on the browser and they clicked on it, they would be able to see it all. And recently I've had to, on Cloudflare, there was two ways to store it. One was a KV worker, where it was just basically, it had to do with, we want to track usage, for example. So a KV worker, whatever the heck that stands for. But in another case where I said, well, we're going to pick a symptom and we're going to tie those to patterns, which we're going to then tie to something else. Then it set up a SQL, we call it a D1 database to store the data. But the reason I do it with the GitHub and the Cloudflare is I can go anywhere, any computer, any browser, and all my information will be there. And it looks similar to what you've done here. So
it's free
and
for
I'm
greater levels. You're not going to hit
paid
any
for them.
paywall there.
They're like too small for them to worry about. If I have to pay them, it means I'm doing pretty well. So that's how I look at it.
All right, let me bring everybody up to speed here, because I know we've been talking about the local host versus the HTML strategy. So I have gone through and I have tested adding different tasks, 3 different. So I'm just going to do number 4 here. Add notes to test 4, please. We're going to set another new priority. We have demo. I'm wondering if I can backdate, in progress, add task. Pops it up here. Great. All right, now this looks really good. And here's the other thing I'll say that is mind-blowing to me. I know this would have taken, now that I understand maybe the total scope, if you were probably going to use libraries and stuff like that, if you were programming this from scratch, it's a couple weeks. If you're building it, hand coding this whole thing, it's going to take you a little bit longer. However, this is what's amazing to me. If you notice, there were 5 phases and no phase was longer than 2 minutes. That means it built this app in less than 10 minutes while we were having primary side conversations. And the total cost to this, you can do a cost command, 85 cents. That is unbelievable when you think about that. Unbelievable.
What's been really good about this is you've confirmed that what I've been doing is right. I saw a TikTok video for a trio of, I think they're called plugins. I don't know if they're skills. It's Deep Project, Deep Plan, Deep Implement. And what you can do in the terminal is you can invoke Deep Project and you can just give it the vaguest of descriptions and it'll walk you through a series of questions to get information, but to have a project brief. But it's actually better, I found, to go and chat and do what you did and have it create a very detailed project brief and then put that into, you don't even have to do the deep plan. And then it will be deep project. And then you do deep plan and it will go through all, this is a more complicated thing that I'm building, but it'll go through all the iterations. And then I said, I want you to review this until you're 95% confident that you haven't forgotten anything. But I also took the output and gave it into chat and said, review this. And they both found something. So I put them all into one file, just answer them all. And then we had that. And now it's doing the implementation. But for simpler things, I'm just going to follow what you said.
Meaning the company I worked at, we did this survey for employees that was called AccuMax. I don't know if you're familiar with AccuMax at all. So let me just, this is somewhat of a sidebar, but we'll give them some free advertising here. So I've used AccuMax for decades. Let me see if it pops up here. Oh, no, that's not it. Let's see. AccuMax, here it is. So AccuMax Index, here's the super short version. The U.S. military needed to find a way to identify, based on application, who would make a good bombardier and who would make a good fighter. Fighter pilot is all over. Foop, 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 up, down, short attention span, got to pay attention, multiple things going on. Bombardier, straight, right? You're flying for hours doing the same thing. You put a fighter pilot in a bombardier seat, you got problems. You put a bombardier in a fighter jet seat, you got a problem. So they used this in World War II to identify who's the best candidates as one of the tests. Well, the marketplace got a hold of it, and now they've converted this into a series of surveys, which are literally just 2 screens of like, I think 30 to 50 words on each screen. It takes you less than 45 seconds to take this. It is so accurate. It use it for all of our employment hiring. And basically what it does is it shares with the individual what type of work environment they find energizing. I'm an engineer. I need it quiet. I like sequence. I like priority. I'm in sales. I like a million different things going on. If you put me in a cubicle doing the same thing every day, I'm going to lose my mind. Well, part of the survey tells you whether you need to talk out loud to crystallize your thoughts, or if you need to internalize to crystallize your thoughts. I happen to know that I am somebody who needs to talk out loud to crystallize my thoughts. So ChatGPT has been a great partner because between ChatGPT or Cloud plus WhisperFlow, I get to articulate out loud, which helps me crystallize my thought. And that feedback going back and forth has been great for me. Okay. You don't need WhisperFlow necessarily. I just find it like sufficient. Okay. This is a sidebar. Apologize for that, but it's good information. All right. Now here's the one thing that I did do, and then we can wrap up is if there's any questions, we can continue to chat, but we'll wrap up for the video sake. Said I tested adding tasks. It works. What should I test next? You don't have to think about it because it has all the context from the plan to the code feedback. It knows where we're at. As long as we're not hitting our context memory inside the chat, it will give me a test plan. Okay. They just created test plan. And now I was kind of hoping we were going to run into a bug here. So if I test now, check your filters. Okay, it works. Obviously, you need to go each one, but we can see it's changing categories. Let's delete a task. This is the one thing I'm not crazy about that it does is that the menu that it brings up is like the system confirmation instead of like a window that looks like the app. So that's just a ticky-tack thing for me. I was able to delete a task, edit this. Let's add. That's in, save is here. Okay. I'm able to edit, and now I can mark it complete. So what happens when I mark it complete? It goes to a completed task that has a drop down on it. Or it expands and collapses on itself. This is crazy useful for literally 10 minutes of planning and an hour of building a software app in between some very intellectually stimulating conversation. All right. So I think, okay, now I don't have the, I'm going to probably divert here. So I'm going to do 2 things. One is I'm going to close out the video, tell everybody, hey, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Really excited. If you're interested in doing a backup, I'm going to attempt to create the backup routine right now. Feel free to stick around. If not, have a great day. All right. So I cannot remember how I did it. So I'm just going to ask, I need to create a backup command. Can you create the prompt for the terminal? I think it'll let me do it this way.
I have a suggestion for your testing as well that I'd love for you to try out.
Okay.
Wait for you to finish your part there.
Okay. Let me just copy and paste this.
Yeah, and if you're coming back, I always have it do a document that shows what the project status is as of this time. And then when I come back, it'll look at it too. So that also helps in case I want a record of it. I don't read it. I just tell it to do it.
Bruce, I was going to comment on your process earlier. And I think if you do more, correct me if I'm wrong, but you tell terminal not to ask you any questions. Do run the process. When you get through, then ask me all the questions. I'll put it in chat, get you the answer, and then come back. Is that right?
I doesn't even put it in chat. I set up folders because I figured out at the end of the day, I really don't care what it does. I just want to know if the outcome is what I want. So I say, unless it says, unless it's going to break, it still asks me if it's okay to do the bash commands, which I don't know enough. But what it does is when it's done, it takes all the questions, it puts them into a folder, a file that says something like questions 20260409 14.83, and it puts it in the questions folder. Now then I take the project brief that it's created or wherever the status is, and I take that file and the questions file, and I say to chat, here's where we are, evaluate it, because right? See what is missing or that it's missed. And then those questions, unless you need my input, take the other file, answer those questions, and then put all the answers into one file called answers 20260409, whatever it is. And then I'm going to download it as a markdown file and I'll put it into the answers folder. And then I go back to code and I say, all the answers you need, look at it. If nothing else comes up, move to the next step. So, and then I can just because every time I'm looking is, what is the least amount that I could do? And when I realize all I want to see is what the outcome is. You guys be interested in, I don't want to through it, but would you be interested in looking at what I've done, but without, wish I had known some of this stuff before I started.
Yeah.
After I do
I have a hard stop in about 10 minutes. But
I'll just put the link in the chat and you can just up and take a look.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's a 5-minute video link at the top that shows you what it does. And I've actually created a bunch more and I'm modifying this. But if you go to the top, there's a link for a video. That's 5 minutes and that shows you everything. Because right now it's set up that if you go past this section, everything you said, Michael, about trial and error and everything else, so much.
Yeah, take a look at this. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
But I think that I'm going to try to be more active in your community, and I'm going through Nate's course now.
Yeah,
I don't understand how to use what I'm doing to apply it for actual engagements, and I know you have to have the relationship.
Yeah, how the two communities complement each other. So you may or may not know, but actually hired me as his community manager for his high ticket incubator. That was the $10,000 per seat incubator. So I was part of that 3-month course. The entire thing.
I don't even know.
Had the training content, and I was really in charge of relationships and making sure everybody was getting their needs met. There was 16 people in that. And then I got to know Nate very well through that experience.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he is amazing. And he is in person as he is on his videos. And when you talk to him, just a great guy. What I've done and talked to him about is I want to do a series on here's Nate Herc's training videos. Now let me show you. I'm going to let you watch me build it. Because during that video, he's doing some shorthand stuff, right? There's assumed setup. You give you a couple of examples. Okay, but how does somebody who's not Nate Herc take that lesson and then what does it look like in real life, right? So that's a part of it. And then this is like the precursor to that. I want to do live builds with people like you guys around that we can learn from one another, try different things when we get stuck. These apps are pretty simple. We haven't got, like in session 3, we're going to get into Cloud MD. We're going to get into backups. We're going to get into intensive planning. You got red team, blue team stuff. Let me show you this. I forget and we run out of time, Bruce. So if you're using localhost, and then Matt will try what you want to try. So you can see my screen here with the Control C and the node server.js.
Yep.
Okay. In the command terminal, if you do bug fixes and you hit refresh, sometimes not all the when you refresh the browser, it doesn't update your latest feature change or whatever. So you'll go into the terminal. You got to make sure that you're in the proper directory. And then you're going to do Control C. and it'll Control C. Basically, you can do it twice, and then what you need to do is a node server.js, and that basically reboots the server and refreshes the server. And now you can go to your app, and instead of hitting refresh, you do Control Shift R, which is a hard refresh. And then typically, now here's one of the things that I will do. I will say, hey, I want to know. Sometimes, like, I run into this, and this drove me crazy. I was talking to Matt one time about 2 in the morning. I literally spent 2 hours trying to debug something and I couldn't figure it out, only to realize my browser wasn't refreshing. So now what I do is I'll do
Done
this.
that.
So I'll do create a version control number with the timestamp down to the second and place in the header.
Yeah, the developer's curse is we publish it local. It's in the browser cache, will not clear. It keeps going
So-
back to the previous version.
So my background, I did a lot of Excel sheets, but when it got beyond a certain point for coding, I would have somebody do that. But when you play around with mine, I may not allow this going forward, but when you're on that discovery page, which is the free section, you can click a tab and it will save your data as a .json file. And if you want, you can come back and upload that file and it'll put all your data back in so you can go to it lots of times and upload it, which is how I originally designed it. I take that feature away from the free one and just like let you use it but not save it. But the whole tool is built on save the file, and if you want to get to the pay part, you get a key if you pay. But you can start fresh. You can give somebody a thing, or you can just go, okay, on my file, even when it's free, because the information there is public information. Just the IP is how I curated it.
Bruce, are you talking
But-
about you're uploading to GitHub, the JSON to GitHub for versioning?
Well, when you're using the free part on that, it actually, and you say save my work or whatever it is, it basically will download the .json file. So if you're
Got
in Windows, it
Yep.
goes to your downloads folder.
Oh, I see.
Wherever you want. And then when you come back, you have to remember where it was. But the reason I'm saying is, you guys seem to have a developer's background. Mine was always, I got a problem to solve. So I learned to use Excel to do that. And it was a more practical point. And when I got into the real coding, also, Michael, I wanted to share with you two quick things that maybe you already know. The first one is there's a fellow, I can't remember his name, but he lives in Ireland or I don't remember, but expert VBA. And what he would do is every month he puts on a webinar where he does a live build. And then the video is available for 1 to 2 days. And then if you want to see it, you have to join his club where he's got a whole bunch of shit that you can do. That video, coding, everything else. The other thing is I stopped for a while, but on my YouTube channel, I had a lot of videos about what I did for clients. And one of them got like views over a few years. I made some templates. I've led to some business. But the point was, most of the videos that were out there were, here's a new function in Excel and what it does. Well, who the hell knows what to do with that and how to apply it? Or there'd be like, you have this situation at work and you look at it and go, well, I never have anything quite like that. But even if I did, I couldn't apply it. My videos were, this is the client. This is what he had. This is his problem. This is why I fixed it. This is what it looked like. People like that. They said, oh, because I actually did. So I think what you're talking about can lead to some business if you do it that way, because you're right. Everybody else, they just tell you stuff, but how do you actually do it?
I'll tell you,
There's nobody does that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And here's the beauty about this long form.
Nobody wants to take a course either. So
because we probably have 25 short YouTube shorts, or if not more. We have at least 10 clips. And what's really nice about this is you can take the transcript from this and the data from, you can take the data from a client and you basically run it through ChatGPT or Cloud or whatever and change the system name.
And there are still people who don't want to do that. Just look, Michael, just do that for me. I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah,
it's pretty slick. So thank you. Appreciate that. Okay,
glad I came.
Yeah, so back to your, you see where you have your cloud, your chat, like a little orange splat in your browser. Nope.
Oh,
Sorry, go back. You're in your test. Yep. Now you want to go down. There it is. Yep. On that. Yep. And then select haiku. You're going to do it right where the drop down is at Sonnet. Click, hover right on Sonnet at the top.
why don't I see? Oh, I see. Okay, in front of me. Okay.
Drop it down to
And
haiku.
haiku. Okay.
You want to just give it a prompt and say, hey, I'm trying to test this. Go ahead and put some fake information in there and make sure that all the models.
Oh, this makes it like a comic browser.
All right. So I'm trying to test this. It.
Yeah, just tell it to go with the fake information that's, let figure that out.
Let it figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do anything. Sometimes it comes back and says, you can do this. I'm like, I'm not doing that. You do that.
Exactly, Bruce. Exactly.
Hey, guys, I'm going to have to hop, but I've made a note to myself to reach out so we can talk one-to-one. I feel like I can learn
Are
a lot.
you kidding me right now? Did it literally test that?
Yeah. Yeah, Ed. Bruce, take care, bud.
Wow.
See you next time.
Bruce, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is how I did 10. I had 110 fields, and I had to do it 10 times for testing. I did it once. It took me almost an hour. And then the other 9 times, I just ran this and said, go figure. I actually used cowork, to be honest. But I just said, go figure this out. Go test this. And it did it perfectly. There you go. So,
Unreal.
yeah,
Unreal.
I wanted to tell you that in the program or during the session, but I thought, well, I don't want to do
I
it.
still have it. No, it's good. I'll edit that in. That's great.
Because that right there is going to save you. Because now you can say, hey, run 3 tests or whatever you want, but let it. They put fake information there they can use, and then boom, it put a really simple 1-line prompt in there. So that's I thought if you wanted to make it more direct or try to throw a loop or whatever, but I don't want to keep you
Yeah.
if you've got to run too.
Not a problem. Hey, I really appreciate you joining me as always.
Yeah, pleasure.
Great co-pilot. You let me know if you need me to do the same for you, okay?
Yeah, I most definitely will do the future, but do you have the next one scheduled yet, or you're still working on that?
No, I think I'm going to do it Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, one suggestion that I have for you,
Sure.
you're doing it naturally, you're using the desktop app. So I would, if I just think that a universal approach for Mac and PC users is to, if you don't use the IDE, just another method, and you're using the desktop app, you're going to have chat, cowork, and code, and then you're going to still have terminal that you can use for Claude Code. And I understand that you like it and it's better as you're more comfortable, but consider that for a future lesson. Because what I think it's going to do is what the natural progression of everyone is we're all using chat, and then we're solving problems on terminal that we aren't aware, like this mean, and then we're going back and forth. So I think
Is
it's
that
going to
so?
be
Is the next progression to use code here, or you saying I should be using the chat here,
now. I,
or I should
I
be doing Claude terminal
do
here?
right. So you should have your terminal on your desktop, and then you should have the Claude desktop app with chat, cowork, and code, which is the 3. There it is. Yeah, you have that on one side, and then you have the terminal box on another, and you're just going to go side to side instead of having it. The IDE does it with it in this format, but it's
The only reason I like this view, and I'm not sure now if there's compelling like usage reasons not to use it. I do like seeing the directory here. So I'm clearly right here,
exactly.
right here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not. Last thing you're worried about is where a file is. You can find a file in 2 seconds. It's more
Yeah.
about
The only, why I use it though
huh?
is because it reminds me I don't have my Claude MD file. It reminds me I don't have
I see.
skills. It remind me of the things I need to like put in here for I think what I'm going to do for the next session is I'm just going to build on this current app and then apply Claude MD where we can do backups. We can do, just going to ask what new features we want. But okay, so I am doing this now, but you wouldn't do code in here though, right?
Remember, it's not the same thing. You can, but it's just not the same thing.
Okay,
It
you're
does-
saying,
Yeah.
so basically I can do what I'm doing now. I'm just going to go right into the terminal and forget about VSC.
Exactly. That's why I've always said I don't understand why people use that, because you've got your file directory, whatever, Mac or PC, doesn't matter. You've got your terminal on one side and you've got the desktop app on the other. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You don't need the third party to put extra steps.
Well, and especially because it loses context once you shut the
Right.
system down, it's useless.
Yeah, you're saying chat is on the right, but that there's no physical or visual association with a desktop app. So people
Right.
think I don't know how to use the desktop app, even though they're
Right.
using it technically. But
Correct.
this way you have the visual, and that's probably my biggest thing. It's visual. I see that, and I had a record terminals running simultaneously last night.